fadeaway with a hand in his face in the air for the win! Yes, sir! Garnett gives Minnesota the win at Target Center!
Towns a rebound, lets it fly, and Karl-Anthony Towns drills it at the buzzer. A catastrophic finish for the Grizzlies.
Welcome to the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast, your home for the best Wolves talk around.
Wiggins spots up there, deep threes, got it. He scores it at the buzzer to give the Timberwolves the victory.
Welcome into the second episode of Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast. My name is Gabe Anderson. Thank you so much for joining me this week. And I'm joined this week, as always, by Chris Emerson. Chris, how you doing?
Doing good.
Awesome. And this week we are joined by Jared Good. Jared, how you doing?
Doing great. Happy to be the first guest on a podcast that I definitely plan on listening to every week.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. Well, another bad week for the Timberwolves. Another just an absolute downer. Particularly, I think the Denver game was the bigger downer for me. It was very difficult. Rubio played so bad. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, let's start with the Denver game. Let's start with you, Chris. What were some of your takeaways from the Denver game?
I mean, obviously, Juancho playing well was good to see. Mm-hmm. But Nas had been playing so well, and I was so excited to see him continue. But that's a tough thing about these back-to-backs versus the same team. I mean, you get, Nas got, I wouldn't say got the better of the Joker the first game, but he definitely gave him some business that the Joker wasn't ready for. And then, now we've got a little scouting report on you that's fresh. Now we know what you're going to do. Now you're not going to catch me by surprise with that, quick move kind of thing. And, they took Nas completely out of it. Mm-hmm. Beasley was bad. I think he was 5 of 16. We're just not good. We just don't have enough talent to go up against a team like that. And it showed, especially on a back-to-back. Like, you might be able to surprise a team, but when you play them twice in a row, you're not surprising them, Mm-hmm. We had no answer.
Yeah, and Jared, your thoughts on the Nuggets game?
Yeah, so I kind of touted earlier when we were talking before we went live that I'm a DFS guy, and I know some of you guys saw on the Timberwolves page that we were all in together that I had said that for whatever reason Hernan Gomez is going to have a good game, and my reasoning was he was getting minutes, and in my opinion, was going to be the last game that he started. That obviously got pushed back with the Okogie news being pushed back a day, but Hernan Gomez was awesome, and that was kind of a nice to see. I still don't think he's a very good player personally, but it was nice to see him have a moment of confidence to where, because I remember 2 games in 3 weeks, I watched him shoot a 3 and hit the backboard without hitting the rim. He's just got some ugly form and some ugly ways about his game. But when the ball starts going in, that's really nice to see. Also, Jokic. I was kind of talking to some people today, and I said, if you had to pick an MVP today, who would you pick? And my top 2 picks at this exact moment would be Nikola Jokic and Julius Randle, which sounds kind of surprising, but those 2 players have been absolutely brilliant this year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they have Jokic. I mean, in the fourth quarter particularly, just picked us apart. Absolutely picked us apart and was just hidden. He can do it all. One of my takeaways from the Denver game particularly is D'Angelo Russell finally playing like a max player. Particularly, he needs to do that now. When Karl-Anthony Towns is out, we don't know. We'll talk about Karl-Anthony Towns a little later, whether or not he'll play, stuff like that. But I think both games, the Portland game and the and the Denver game, we saw D'Angelo Russell play like a max player, and also I saw people mentioning on the page, he finally went to the basket. He was finally being aggressive and hitting some shots. So that was my main takeaway from the game, was that D'Lo was finally playing up to his contract, and he needs to do that more in order for the Wolves to succeed. Let's talk briefly about the Portland game. Let's start with Jared. What are kind of your thoughts about the Portland game?
One thing that I really thought was great about the Portland game was Vanderbilt. I've liked Vanderbilt throughout the past few games, and I thought that his length and athleticism and his ability to just play hard. I like that kid. I want him to eventually maybe even start at the 4. I think right now he's a good bench piece. Other things that were disappointing was, I know they talked about it on the halftime show, was we missed a lot of bunnies at the rim in the first half. I think we were 8 from 9 within the paint, which is kind of disappointing. When you get there, you expect to make those shots. And then Damian Lillard, man, I mean, he had his coming out party against us, and he was just on fire. He was unstoppable. And that's one thing that I look at a lot with the Timberwolves right now, is defensively, they got a lot to do defensively.
Yeah. And I think we knew that going into the season. We just didn't know how bad it was going to be. Chris, some of your thoughts from the Portland game.
So I was excited. And I mean, everything, you have to take almost every thought on any of these Wolves games in like snippets, because you can't really say the whole thing was good or the whole thing was bad, because, we've had a little bit of both on all of them. I really liked, in the first quarter, there was a little run with Rubio and D'Lo on the court together, and they looked good. I think Rubio found D'Lo on a little play right under the hoop. They were moving well, where Rubio would come up, and then D'Lo would swing around up top off a little pick, catch the ball, and he's in motion, so his guy's already, kind of trailing, which is good for D'Lo, because he's not exactly like the fast burst to get by a guy. He needs a little bit of a bump, a little bit of a help. So that helped. So I was really encouraged by that in the beginning. I liked Beasley's hustle on defense. I mean, these are little things that, I hope to see continue, but I mean, he works hard. I mean, he's skinny. He's not, he's not going to be Kawhi Leonard. Like, let's not pretend he is, but he's hustling, and he's working hard. He still hits the boards hard. Rubio looked faster.
He looked better.
He looked more engaged. He looked quick. I heard actually just yesterday or something that right before the bubble he had COVID. So I don't know if he had symptomatic COVID or asymptomatic COVID, but either way, he looked good. I think he finished with 10 assists, one turnover, 5 steals or something like that. I mean, it wasn't, you're not going to sign him up for MVP, but compared to the game before in Denver, it was night and day.
Yeah.
It's just, this team right now has had no time together, like literally none. Compared to the teams we've played. Like, all the teams we've played are all, long-time rostered players playing together. So, it's going to be ugly for a while. You just got to pick and choose the good things.
And something that I've noticed from the Timberwolves, particularly, so the Portland game, maybe it's a little bit of an outlier, because that second quarter, Damian Lillard and CJ McCollum just did what they do. I mean, they light us up basically every time they play us anyway. So what kind of the question that I want to go to is, how can the Wolves avoid that catastrophic quarter. You know, against Denver, it was the fourth quarter, right? They got outscored 71-45. Against Portland, it was the second quarter where you get down by so much, you let up 47 points. And you're basically, I mean, they went on a little run at the end, but you're basically out of the game from there. Also, against Washington, there was a bad quarter as well. So let's start with you, Jared. How do the Wolves kind of avoid the catastrophic quarters that they've had, and just to stay in games? Because really, particularly against Denver, they were in those games, even leading for like 60% of the time. They just have that one bad quarter. How do you think, Jared, they avoid the bad quarter that they've been having?
Yeah, so this is something that I've talked about with many people, and it's kind of frustrating to me. And I think a lot of it has to do with rotations and maybe adding a solid veteran presence on the second unit. You got to remember, this team's young. Like, we are one of the youngest teams in the entire league, if not the youngest. But so earlier today, I was talking and I was thinking that I want to have D'Lo, Beasley, and Okogie at the 1, 2, and 3, and then Vanderbilt at the 4, and Cat at the 5. And my reasoning for this was basically, Okogie's not a 4. A lot of times when he was playing, we were starting him at the 4. We're trying to play small ball, and it just really hasn't fit with this team. I get the theory behind it and what we're trying to do, but it's just not there yet. But then that would leave you a bench with Rubio, Anthony Edwards, Jared Culver, Ed Davis, and Hernan Gomez. So I feel like that would be a more split and solidified second unit. The second unit has struggled on this team for many, many years.
Yeah, absolutely. And Chris, you got anything to add on that? How can the Wolves kind of avoid that terrible quarter that they've had the last couple of games?
I mean, it all comes down to the wrist. I mean, if Cat can come back, the thing that he can do is get buckets. Yeah. You can dump it in the post. He can get buckets. He can get fouled. You can run a simple pick and roll. I mean, you're not going to have D'Lo and Cat on the court at all time. This is one of the problems I have with what's going on with Rubio right now. I mean, Rubio's been playing with. I mean, the main lineup that Rubio's been playing with is Davis, Layman, Beasley, and Edwards. And I mean, if Beasley's not hitting shots, who scores? Literally nobody. Mm-hmm. Like, we don't have the talent. That's the thing. We just don't have enough talent. So if Cat's not there to slow down a run, to get a couple post-ups, to hit a 3, to make a 10-0 run be a 10-4 run, we don't stop those quarters. We're not going to. It's going to keep happening, and we're going to keep getting blown out because we just aren't good enough. The NBA is a talent league, and we don't have the talent.
Yeah. Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Yeah, it's tough for the Timberwolves right now because, like we've been saying, they play 90% of a good game, and then they just let off that one rough quarter, and then it looks like they got blown out, but they really didn't because they were in it for the last couple of days. Something that I didn't put on the outline, but I was debating with someone last night. I think the answer to this question is yes, but and we'll start with you, Chris. Do you think that Malik Beasley is, now obviously with the Wolves, yes, because they don't have the talent. Do you think that on most teams that Malik Beasley is a starter level player? Chris, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, I think he can be. I think for sure he can. I mean, depends on who else is on the roster, obviously, but I think he can be. I mean, he hustles hard. He rebounds his position well. He's a 40% three-point shooter. But, I mean, he's also, 23?
Yeah.
I mean, let's not act like this guy's a finished project either. So I think he can be, but I think, truthfully, he's better as a sixth man. I mean, in a perfect world, you want him to just flamethrow off the bench and be the guy that's taken, most of the shots on the second unit. Because on the first unit, if he's not shooting, if he's not getting shots up, what is he doing?
That's true.
You know, like really, how is he impacting the game? I mean, he's a decent rebounder, so I guess that could be part of it. But I mean, we've got D'Lo and Cat. They're going to be taking 20 shots a game right there. I mean, there's not a lot more to eat, with those two taking those shots. But I would say he can be. I think he's a great 3 for us. I think he's a great third man for us right now. It's just we haven't had our first man. Yeah. So he's been having to play a second role, and he's not a second role guy yet.
Yeah. And Jared, what do you think? Is Malik Beasley a starter level player in this league?
I think Beasley starts on 60 to 70% of other NBA teams. I think he's absolutely a starter. And like Chris was saying, this dude he plays hard. Yep. And when we watch the Timberwolves, we know that they're struggling, and we know that it's not fun to watch at times, but we are big fans, so we watch them. But at the same point in time, like, that's what you want to see when a team is struggling. Like, this guy has the heart to play basketball, and he wants to be in the spot that he's in. Efficiency-wise, like, obviously he could be a little bit better of a shooter at times, but I mean, like Chris was saying, this guy can be a flamethrower. He reminds me kind of like a Lou Williams, but with more defense. Like, when you bring Lou Williams off the bench, you expect Lou Williams to put the ball in the basket, and Beasley has that capability.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think that Malik Beasley is a starter in this league, and I just think that he brings too much to the table, and I think he'd start in 60% of the teams as well. So what I want to go to, Karl Anthony Towns, we might get him back tonight. And the question is, do you think that Karl Anthony Towns, it's automatically like he just fixes this team, or do you think there's more that's got to happen for this team to succeed?
So, I mean, I think he solves a lot of problems. I mean, once you move him in, of course, assuming he's at full strength and full, in shape, you've got your number one scorer back. That moves D'Lo to the number 2 scorer, where he's, can be more efficient. It moves everybody down a peg. It puts Nas in his backup role where he can be effective. He doesn't have to worry about fouls. It lets Vanderbilt slide into the power forward spot, where I think he'll actually be way more efficient than he was at center. And then when we mix around our starters, like, basketball isn't like hockey where you just do shift changes, where you bring in a whole new roster. So now you can take D'Lo out, and you can have Rubio running the team with Cat on the floor. I mean, Rubio's used to playing with real NBA talent. He hasn't been playing with that since he's been with the second unit. So now he's got a guy he can run pick and roll with. A lot of our offense ran through Cat. Like, we only had a couple weeks to set up our entire team's offense. And most of it was involved with Cat. I mean, he's getting 3, 4, 5 assists a game, a lot of elbow action. It's just, everything that was planned was basically on Cat's back. Our whole roster, the way it's set up, we're weak at the big man. So losing him was double-edged sword for us, because now roster-wise, we're extra short, and then talent-wise, obviously, with maybe the best big man shooter in the history of the NBA, gone. It killed us. So I think it does. I think it does put us right back into playing for the number 10 seed and maybe a shot at that little play-in playoffs. We'll see.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And Jared, what do you think? Does Cat make us automatically back in as a playoff contender, or do you think there's more at play here?
Yeah, so Cat, obviously, like Chris was saying, he does just everything for this team. And the one thing that I wanted to talk about with Cat coming back is I've noticed in the games that Cat has missed, we either start super fast or we start super slow. And I think that kind of will be eliminated with Cat. You won't have that fear of starting a game going out down 2-13. And I think that's happened a few times. There's been opposite ends of the spectrum where we're making our shots and we start out hot as well. But I think Cat eliminates that fear of starting out down 12 early. And that's a big issue with this team, which we talk a lot about the second unit. And the second unit is starting to find its mold more with Rubio, Edwards, and, and Vanderbilt. So we're starting to solidify what our second unit is instead of just jumbling guys in there like we did to start the season. So I think Cat, obviously, I thought he was a dark horse for MVP if this team makes the playoffs. Hot take there, but he's a guy that gives you 22 and 12 every single night. He's shoots 41% from three, and that's a big stuff for this team, and it solidifies the center role, which right now is a huge issue.
Yeah, it would be super nice to have Karl Anthony Towns back. Of course, I mean, he is the leader of this team. He's a max player. He's basically the face of the franchise, so having him back would be huge. So what I want to talk about is the other injured player, Josh Okogie. What do you think his role is, and how do you see him helping his team once he comes back from his injury?
Yeah, Okogie is one of the few players on this team that plays defense. He's not the most talented guy in the world, but he plays hard and he fits really good with his role that he has on this team. He knows that if LeBron James comes to town, it's likely going to be guys like Okogie that are going to be asked to guard him. And I think that he does a lot for us in terms of defensive matchups, so like when we have big name players come to town and play against us, you can fit Josh on those wing players, and I think they're going to try and do that more instead of having him play the four, what they did at the beginning of the season. Josh Okogie's a 3 in this league, and we need to quit pretending like he's a number 4. And I think that we're going to solidify that once we get healthy again here, like we were talking earlier about our dream starting lineup, and I think all three of us agreed that Okogie should be a 3 instead of a 4.
Part the way it confuses the lineups because it just adds another wing to a team that's just packed with wings. But he's got more talent than those guys. Some of them. He's at least got an NBA talent, and some of those other guys haven't even shown that yet. So as a point of attack defender, it's huge. It helps us hide D'Lo off on, a small forward or a shooting guard or whoever their weakest offensive player is. It lets us have more, adventurous lineups. Like we can have lineups that are just mayhem. Like you put him and Vanderbilt on the court at the same time, and you've just got mayhem happening on defense. It'll be fun. I mean, the wings that we have and the versatility of what we think the versatility of them are, gives Ryan a great opportunity to really play around with lineups and find out what works. I would like to see Okogie definitely move down and guard shooting guards and small forwards. I was never sold on the power forward thing, but we'll see. Any talent on this team right now is a welcome addition.
So one thing the Wolves have definitely been struggling with is defense, and I think Josh Okogie brings a bunch of that to the table. Of course, he's in lightning rod. He brings a lot of defense. So the Wolves just really need to be middle of the road defensively. How do you think that the defense gets better?
Back to Cat. I mean, before he got hurt, mind you, it's a small sample size, but he was our best defensive player. He was getting a lot of weak side blocks. He wasn't getting as many reach-in fouls. He was holding his own. He's got good size. He can rebound well. If we can lock in that center spot, that helps, again, guys like Vanderbilt move to the 4. If we have a lineup that has, a big 4, which, the whole small ball thing was real trendy last year, and everyone thought that it was going to take off. But looking around the league, there's a lot of guys, a lot of teams playing traditional size power forwards. And we at least need to have someone on the roster that can defend that. And up until now with Cat out, we haven't. So we're at least not at a size disadvantage like we were. I don't know. I mean, our defensive strategy is to be middle of the road. So we're never going to be great. With the whole push guys off the three-point line, kind of give them an open mid-range shot, just sort of stay ahead. They keep saying, they actually preach this. What is it? Something like average is good enough or something like that is their slogan for defense. So they're not trying to shut teams out. They just want to not be horrible.
Yeah, so you're adding, hopefully within the next week, I think we'll have both Cat and Okogie back, which I would argue are our top two defenders, and I think pretty much everyone would agree with that. And that does a lot for you defensively. We all going into this season said this team doesn't have a defender on their team. They don't have a shutdown defender, and we're not playing like we need to be. Like Chris was saying, if we can be average, we're shooting 30 to 40 threes a game, and we play at a fast pace. That's not something that you're going to have a Bruce Brown on. He doesn't play on those type of teams. So you're gonna see a lot of we're gonna be the Houston of the North, our original goal was. We're gonna play fast, we're gonna shoot threes, and if we can do just enough defensively to win games, that'll be fine.
Yeah, totally agree. Like you mentioned, that Rosas is from Houston and he wants to run that kind of offense, and so we'll see if they can be a middle of the road squad. Something I wanted to mention here is D'Angelo Russell and Ricky Rubio, a front court, them playing together. Do you think that it can work? And who do you think should be the main ball handler when D'Lo and Rubio are on the court at the same time?
Yeah, so when Rubio and D'Lo are on the floor together, Rubio has to be the ball handler. D'Angelo Russell has shooting guard experience. It frees him up more. You get an elite passer like Rubio on the floor. And while we all love D'Lo at the one, when those two are on the floor, Rubio can't play the two. He doesn't have the ability to shoot and make plays at the two. He's got to handle the ball. And as far as them being on the lineup or on the floor at the same time, I like the idea because I think it has a lot, for me, it has a lot to do with, I want to see those two in the closing lineup. I want to see Rubio and D'Lo with Beasley at the three. I don't think you can get a guy like Okogie can be great for energy and stuff, but I don't think he belongs in our closing lineup. So there's a lot of moving parts in our lineups when I talk about 2 through 4. That would be obviously the shooting guard through the power forward position. I think those positions are obviously very interchangeable with our roster. But as far as the two together, I like the idea. It's kind of more of a work in project because it hasn't worked out the greatest. But I think ideally, looking forward, the end of the season, I want to see those two in the closing lineup. Yeah, I remember this is a shortened season. There's 72 games, and I believe we are, 8 games in. So now's the time to figure it out.
So there's no reason it shouldn't work. I mean, Rubio's played with Mitchell. Rubio's played with Booker. Rubio's played with all-star caliber 2 guards that also handled the ball and created on their own and created for others. Booker last year scored 26 points and still had 6.5 assists. That's the kind of stat line D'Lo can easily have. I mean, we're not saying take the ball completely out of his hands and make him a Klay Thompson type shooter. Rubio, if we want to get value out of him, he needs to be playing with better players than, Davis and Layman, and Wancho. Like, these aren't the type of guys that make him excel at what he does and what he does at an elite level. So I hope it works. It comes down to Ryan and D'Lo accepting that to make it work. I mean, Ryan's going to have to, stick his nose in the Suns playbook from last year and pull some of those gems out that they used. D'Lo is going to have to understand that he's going to be coming off the ball and he's going to be playing, running off a couple picks, catching the ball in the second action of the offense. which I think actually suits him better. How many times have we seen D'Lo come down, dribble it 6 times, and heave a jumper that's a miss? Like, that's not good offense. I get it, D'Lo. You're an amazing player, but you can get that shot whenever you want. Let's pass it around a little bit. I think our team can go better. I think we can make it work, but I mean, it hasn't so far, so maybe it's just a pipe dream.
Yeah, and just what Chris was just saying there. There's been a few games where I've watched where D'Lo's been playing good, and he makes 1 3, and then he comes up to the 3-point line and dribbles a lot, and he heat checks himself within 5 seconds of the shot clock. And every time he does it, I say, it's such a bad shot. But it's almost like you try not to get frustrated with it because he is so talented and he can go off in an instant. But he needs to be a little bit more patient with how quick he heat checks himself.
You know, I totally agree. There's definitely times where D'Lo throws up that shot early in the shot clock. As you said, almost a heat check where it's not necessarily advised. Trying to be the alpha male of the offense. I mean, technically, he is the alpha male of the offense right now, but I mean, you can't be throwing up those kind of shots. So, kind of transitioning, Juancho Hernan-Gomez. What is his role on this team? And I mean, he's only shooting 32% from 3 right now, and I think a lot of that was that one game where he went off. But what do you think his role for Juancho Hernan-Gomez and how he fits on this team?
Well, if I was Ryan, I'd do what I think he does with most of his lineups. He goes into Rosas's office and asks him what he should do. I think Juancho is a product of what Rosas wants to bring. Rosas likes these smaller power forwards that, you know, can get out and run, that can chase a guy a little bit around the perimeter. The guy's a 35% three-point shooter in his career. And I'm not talking NBA career. I'm talking total basketball career. I mean, if you look in Europe, he shot 35+% for his career. Last year, he shot 42 or something like that for us. The guy can shoot. He hasn't been shooting now, but who knows? Maybe he shot well on Adam Sandler's movie set because that's all he did all summer. So the guy hasn't been playing basketball for 10 months, so he's out of shape. He's out of rhythm. I think making a quick assessment on him is off. And this is coming from a guy who I didn't like Juancho. I didn't like him last year, and I didn't like us signing him. But the one thing that I did like is he wanted $10+ million as a free agent. And Rosas said, okay, you're a restricted free agent. You want that kind of money? Go find that contract, and then we'll talk about it. And he didn't find it. No other team was paying him that money. So when he came back to us with his tail between his legs, Rosas says, okay, maybe we'll talk to 7. And we'll give you a 2-year or a 3-year deal with a team option on that 3rd year. So he's on a pretty friendly deal. $7 million a year is backup money. If he can shoot 35-40%, that's the kind of guy you can stick in a trade to make salaries work, to make something like a Ed Davis at $5 million, and then you stick Juancho on there at $7 million, and all of a sudden you can be in play for a $15 million guy. You know, that's what you need. That's where his value is right now. And if it doesn't work in a trade, you know, a $7 million backup who comes in and shoots 35-40% from 3 and doesn't hurt you like making dumb plays, it's not the worst thing to have on a roster.
Yeah, I think that Juancho has some value. We don't really have many big guys on this team, so if you need someone to come in, maybe shoot 35% from 3 and hit some and play some defense on some of the bigger guys, there's an opening for that. But so, kind of the black sheep, one of the black sheep of this team, I believe, is Jarrett Culver, who I believe we're just playing him to try to ramp up his trade value, and there's not many other players to play. So, Chris, we'll start with you. What do you think is Jarrett Culver's trade value and or role on this team going forward? Or do you think that it's over for Jarrett in Minnesota soon?
You know, it's tough. It's going to be interesting to see how Rosas takes on Culver. So this is the guy that he traded up for. He wasn't his exact target, but he passed up on, guys that we needed, guys at the, backcourt like Kobe White or, Tyler Hero or many other guys that could have looked really nice on this roster, and he took Culver. So it's going to be interesting to see if he has some sort of connection to him and doesn't want to move him because of that, or if he's willing to move him. The problem is his play. He doesn't bring much to the court right now. He's shooting 40% field goal, 25% from three, 61 from free throw, like getting half an assist a game. Like, that's terrible numbers. And, also on defense, statistically, if you look in it, he's playing really poor. I mean, everyone wants to say he's a shutdown defender because that's what they said pre-draft, but he hasn't been. So if he's not bringing it on defense and he's not doing anything on offense, what does he add? It's tough because it seems like every game he plays, his trade value gets lower and lower. So I don't know. It might be one of those things where it's like Derek Williams, where he keeps getting his value lower and lower by his play, or even Shabazz Muhammad. And by the time we decide to move him, we've got to add assets just to get off his contract.
Yeah, so I always have a special place in my heart for Jared Culver just because me and my wife were at US Bank Stadium for the Final Four, and Texas Tech was the team that we eventually were there in the championship game rooting for. And he's a great player. He's a great college player, and he was the focal point of that offense. But in the NBA, like Chris mentioned, it's just not working. Defensively, he's been real bad, and offensively, he's been a lot below average as well. I think that you try to trade him if you can right now, because I think his value will be what it is. I don't think it's going to go up or down. It's just people know who he is. It's out on him. The verdict's out on him, and I would use him as a trade bait right now to make salaries match. He's a former first round pick that was drafted 6th overall, and maybe teams don't do their scouting report well enough on him, and we can get rid of him. I'm not a believer in him excelling his game, and it kind of hurts me to say that because Jared Culver was a guy that I liked coming out of this draft, and it just ain't working.
Yeah, one of the only things I think that Jared Culver brings to the table is an occasional good dunk here and there. He really doesn't do much shooting-wise for your team, and maybe you could say defensive a little bit, but I think the Wolves got to get rid of him while the asking price is still kind of high. So we're going to wrap up the show here pretty quick, but we got some games coming up. The San Antonio Spurs, 2 against the Spurs, and then the Memphis Grizzlies. So what do you guys looking for out of the Wolves in these 2 games, and kind of preview what we got coming up for our listeners?
So I'm gunning to split against the Spurs. The Spurs have gotten a lot worse in the past few years, and they really only have DeRozan and Aldridge. I mean, you can say you can like DeJounte Murray as a point guard, but I think you're out of the norm on that. But so the thing that scares me why we can't beat this team twice is because, 1, they're really well coached, and 2, it just seems like crafty veterans like LaMarcus Aldridge, even though he's 100 years old now, those type of players just seem to eat us up. And I think he might get us for a game, especially if we can't add some of our defenders back. Like, as the game sits right now, unless Towns plays, I don't know who guards Aldridge on our team, and that scares me. And looking towards Memphis is in complete disarray. Jonas Valanciunas is going to be out. It sounds like he had a mid-game COVID test. I don't know if that came back positive or not, but he missed the whole second half yesterday due to a health protocol. So they're going to be without Ja Morant. They're going to be without Jonas Valanciunas. I don't see how we can't beat that team twice.
Right.
Well, there couldn't be a more polar opposite team from the Timberwolves as the Spurs. I mean, talk about not only history of the team being successful almost their entire existence, it feels like, compared to us, but the Spurs are such a veteran team. I mean, like you're saying, Aldridge, they've got Rudy Gay off the bench, who's been around forever and fairly successful forever. They've got DeRozan. Those guys know how to play, and they know how to play together. And then we counter that with a bunch of talent that doesn't really know how to play yet and has never played together. So it's going to be weird to see, but without Cat, it's 2 losses for sure. With Cat, I would say game 1, well, yeah, I mean, if Cat can play 25 minutes, I would say game 1 should be a win. In game 2, they'll probably have us figured out and they'll beat us by 15. I mean, just like you said, Popovich knows how to coach and knows how to put a team together. The Grizzlies, you know, they're a sneaky team. I mean, if Valanciunas is out, which it sounds like he is, we're okay. But then we got to go up against Gorgie, man. We got a homecoming for Gorgie and Tyus Jones. It'll be kind of fun to see those 2 guys out there running with us. Brandon Clark, another guy maybe we should have drafted instead of Culver. He would have looked good at power forward right now. He's a hustle guy. He's a guy that just kind of mucks it up. I hope to see him and Vanderbilt battling it out. That'll be fun. I think we should for sure get 1 win against the Grizzlies, and talent-wise, we should get them both. But either way, I want to see us in the game till the end more than anything. Like right now, I'm not planning on winning a championship this year. I love watching young players develop in garbage time. It's a rare thing that I like as a fan compared to some, but it's time to start watching competitive games all the way through the 4th quarter. And really, that's all I'm asking for out of these 4 games. If we can split, that's awesome. Better, even, more than split, even better. But I just want competitive games.
Yeah, it would be nice if we can get back to competitive basketball. That would definitely be a huge plus for the sake of all of our fans. Well, thank you so much for joining us, guys. We'll be back next week, and this has been another episode of the Everything's Coming Up Timberwolves podcast.